You all for joining us for Validating Voices, Simple Skills that Make a Lasting Difference with Nicole Lee. I do want to share a little bit about Nicole before we hear a little bit about you all. Nicole Lee is a licensed clinical social worker with a background in trauma-informed care. At the heart of everything Nicole does is a commitment to social justice through empathy, advocacy, and human connection. She has led programs for survivors of gender-based violence, managed school and hospital-based mental health services, directed transitional housing programs, and contributed to the operations of 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. In private practice since 2016, she works with children, adults, couples, and families. And she holds a BA in anthropology and a master's in social work from NYU, along with advanced clinical training in trauma therapy and supervision. And with that, again, welcome all. Thank you for joining us. And I'm now going to pass it along to Nicole Lee to get us started.
Thank you, Diana. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Felicia, for setting us up for success here. We're rocking and rolling. I was just scanning. We got everyone chatting in where they're calling in from, joining us. I'm just seeing such a breadth of representation. So we've got inpatient, we've got outpatient, we've got community-based, we've got hospital-based. We've got, just the whole lifespan represented, which is so reflective of what these tools are here to support. So very, very excited to be with y'all here. So we got through our welcome, we got through our continuing ed information. Thanks again, Diana. If you guys have questions, you can chat in or follow up with an email if needed. We're going to talk about these two amazing tools and kind of in parallel practice them while we're together in this hour. We're going to really focus on why validation matters. And how to bring it to life. We talk about it so often in so many places, but what does it really look like and how do you actually do it in this work? We're going to review it and practice in tandem with the video and the discussion guide, which are the two new tools that we're so excited to share with you all today. And then we're going to talk about how do you use these outside of this space? Can you share them with your teams and how to bring them to life outside of this hour that we'll have? And as we mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A at the end for any additional questions or any other talking points that we want to get to. It is highly interactive. Please, here's the agenda. Sorry, there y'all go. Please feel free to chat in any questions or thoughts or reactions. Also, if you feel comfortable and you're able to participate through speaking, you can raise your hand and we will take you off mute and love to hear us interact that way too. So let's dive right in. All right, so to kick us off, validation. Why did we see this as a skill that we wanted to highlight and to create tools around to really strengthen as a best practice? Can folks chat in why validation matters? And Melissa Carlton, thank you. So builds trust and rapport. Absolutely. It shows that we are listening. Stepping stone to dialogue. Oh yeah, I love the metaphor. The stepping stone. Yes, builds relationships. I'm seeing respect. Oh yes, everyone. There's so many chats flowing in. Understanding, building self-confidence, informed practice. Yeah, it informs where we go in the work with the folks, the youth, the caregivers who we're serving. Builds confidence. Yes. Make sure clients feel heard, understood, heard, and seen. Demonstrates empathy. All right. Yeah, we are all dialed in here. Exactly. Thanks, everybody. I see non-judgmental. We're going to talk about that more as well. Perfect. So the value of validation, seeing, hearing, and valuing the people we serve. So as many of you chatted in, it from the outset promotes connection and understanding. It really ensures that the individual who we are sitting with, the caregiver, the youth, the client, can confirm that we are understanding what they're sharing with us. It allows feelings to be shared and held without jumping to solutions, without jumping to them being fixed. Sometimes we just need to acknowledge what is coming up in the space and what our clients are sharing with us without jumping to a fix or a solution. Validation sends a message of acceptance, and we're going to spend a little bit of time differentiating validation from condoning, because I think that's an important nuance to drill in here, as well as to share and how you guys use these tools outside of this hour. It promotes feelings identification, which we know is a very strong cornerstone of just ownership and empowerment over what we're feeling, and then how we use those feelings to inform what we do and how inform what clients can choose to do. And we're going to see in the video, this part of the set of tools that we're releasing today, how validation can lead to change and activate in treatment, and how you can validate and hold and empower the client who you're sitting with to actually make forward progress in the treatment towards the goals that they've identified with you. So the difference of validation versus condoning. So we wanted to just hone in on condoning for a moment and take a second to differentiate that approach, because it is highly different and deserves some time and space to differentiate. So condoning, rather than acknowledging or validating, it approves or excuses behaviors or beliefs. It can reinforce unhelpful or harmful behaviors because we're not we're suggesting that there's an approval of what is happening, rather than an exploration for different approaches or different ways to cope or to move through challenges. It also focuses on agreement or justification while closing the door to accountability. So it doesn't allow as much reflection, it doesn't allow activation, and it can just stagnate the work, and rather than move forward towards treatment goals that the client that you're serving has identified. So some examples to bring that to life. Example of condoning might sound like this comment, which is kind of approving a behavior of yelling. You were right to yell, anyone would have. Rather than this example of validation, which names a feeling and acknowledges the route to getting to that behavior, which was, I can see how that would make you frustrated. So the situation was frustrating, and being able to name that as an understandable outcome given the circumstances. I'm not seeing if Diana or Felicia, if you're seeing questions. I don't see any so far, but if we see responses, feel free, because it's such a full house here. So I don't want to miss anyone's comments. So thanks so much. All right. So in the video, so these two tools we're releasing today, and we're going to explore them in parallel. They really talk about three core elements of validation, and they're going to be brought to life both through the video that we're going to watch, as well as the discussion guide that we're going to share here shortly. So validation, really at the core, is composed of compassionate curiosity. And what we've defined that as in this space is a deep desire to understand the other person's experience. So a real reaching and a real exploration of what is happening in this other person's life to get them to the space where they are now and the feelings that they're experiencing. The second component of validation that we want to emphasize is active listening. So really being attentive, really paying attention to what words are being stated, and reaching for the meaning intended, rather than any meanings we assume. So really trying to reach for empathy, which was brought up as what validation affords, reaching for empathy and reaching for the meaning intended by the client and what they are communicating to us as their provider. And lastly, we wanted to emphasize non-judgmental reflection, which is mirroring back what is said descriptively and checking our judgment or any biases that may be present, and using just what the client said to reflect back and confirm understanding. This really lets the client know that we are with them, we are present, we are tracking and understanding what they're sharing with us, and ensures that we're with them, we're meeting them where they're at, which is at the core of where we want to do our work, is where the client is sitting. All right, next slide here. There we go. So providing validation, what can it really look like? So at its core, it recognizes a person's emotional experience and affirms its inherent worth. That could sound like, you have every right to feel upset and angry. I think anyone who went through that would feel the same. So it's acknowledging the circumstances of what this person went through and how the feelings that are present, and they're sharing their feelings with you, is heard and understood and understandable, that this is maybe where they would end up and what feelings they are experiencing. It also acknowledges a person's strengths, efforts, and experiences. So that what that would sound like is it makes sense that getting told you're not good enough throughout your life would affect your self-esteem. So really connecting what they went through to where they are now and really allowing them to acknowledge and sit with that journey, kind of what they've experienced and how they've gotten to where they are. It also can really help build self-efficacy in this space where they can really recognize that they have many of the ingredients needed for change, and then even be able to see that change is possible. I think that was also something dropped in the chat around the treatment and the work that's being done and being able to see the hope for change. And lastly, reframing behaviors as understandable and expected in terms of a response to adversity. And what that could look like, an example was, it was really brave of you to step back from that fight yesterday. It shows how hard you've been working to find new ways to interact with others. So reinforcing and demonstrating a choice in engaging differently, and an emphasis on the hope for a different way forward, and a focus on their success and what they're able to do well, what they're taking from the work in the sessions and the therapy, and externalizing it and generalizing it into their life. Okay, so that's a really rapid kind of broad strokes overview of validation. I want to also just remind folks, if you have questions or thoughts or reactions, feel free to raise your hand or chat in. And we're still seeing people join and share where they're calling in from. So thanks for doing that. So we're gonna take a second and use this opportunity to actually share excerpts of the video, and then come back together after watching in 2 sections and process some of the discussion guide questions live together as a group. And so what I'll ask, let's see what we can do here. I'm going to switch over. This is going to be a little clunky. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to go over to the video. And we're not going to share the entire video because we've done a lot of the kind of level setting, table setting here already together, reviewing what validation entails. So we're going to watch a few minutes of the first, actually, you know what? We need to do the discussion guide first. So let me go back. Felicia, would you mind dropping the discussion guide in the chat, and let me go to that slide before we go to the video. Sorry about that, folks. So let me go back to this view so y'all can see it. All right, so Felicia has dropped one of the 2 tools that we're sharing with y'all today. So this is a discussion guide to be used in tandem with the video that we're going to share 2 excerpts from today. We've structured this to let you all know how this tool ought to be used or could be used, how you can take this outside of this hour and maybe share with your peers or with folks you supervise or your own teams. And page 1 kind of level sets of like what the context and what the content of the video is, and page 2 entails discussion questions, 4 of which we're going to work through together today, just as an example of how it could be done in real life as we're doing it in real life. And we also have a note about adapting it for supervisors and how supervisors can think through some of these questions in their own supervisory roles, as well as in parallel of how validation can be used in supervision with supervisees. So if you would click through and open up that PDF so you have access to the discussion guide for future reference. It's also going to be available on the CTAC website, as well as this recording. Okay, perfect. So now that we've reviewed that a bit, we're going to share an excerpt. So let me just try to toggle over here as seamlessly as possible. All right. How's that looking, Felicia and Diana? You can see the video? Okay. And I'm going to push play here. We're going to watch about a 4-minute excerpt here.
Jocelyn is Jason's mother, who recently went through a divorce with Jason's father. Jason is still very attached to his father, and Jocelyn is concerned about her son visiting him. Jason is acting out at home with his mom, and she's very frustrated about this. Jocelyn has her own history of adversity, and this may be reflected in her feelings of insecurity and strong reactions to Jason and his behavior.
Good to see you again, Jocelyn.
Thanks, Joe.
I just had a chance to meet with Jason, and we're coming along really well. He was able to share a lot with me about how he feels about his father and wanting to see his father more. And I want to share some of that with you. But first, I just want to go back to your perspective and talk a little bit about the concerns you've shared with me in the past.
You know, the situation hasn't been great. I think kind of as we're going through the divorce, and Jason is spending basically the weeks with me, weekends with dad. Jason has been going back and forth between my home and my ex-husband's home, and I don't even know if I can call it a home, just that place that he's living in. Just a lot of shitty folks who are around, and not thrilled that my son is around that. And it feels awful sending him there.
I'm seeing a few things there. One is your concern as a mom for his safety, and that's totally understandable. You're his mother and you want to make sure he's safe.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing that I'm hearing is that it's causing a lot of problems between you and him and your relationship. He comes back, he's irritated and bothered, and that brings up stuff in you, and you get irritated and bothered and frustrated with his responses.
Every time now that he's coming back from his weekend at his dad's place, he just seems irritated. Like he is irritated with me more so, and now kind of everything that I'm doing seems to piss him off, right? So I was seeing somebody, for example, for some time. It just caused a ton of arguments, and now, you know, I had to break it off because of kind of how it was escalating with my son. So I just feel like everything I do, he's kind of criticizing me, but on the other hand, his dad gets to be kind of the fun parent. He doesn't have any rules. He can see whoever he wants. But I feel like I'm kind of the tough parent, and I have to be the one to set rules and structure around his life. So trying to figure out how to kind of navigate that now.
That's a really tough spot to be in, having to be both, you know, the mother and the disciplinarian and be there for him and have both roles.
I think that he's just choosing him over me, and I'm scared that, you know, he prefers him as a parent over me.
That's got to be really scary, that you're going to lose your son.
Yeah. No. It's been tough.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna pause there. And let me get back over to view. Okay, so we're gonna chat two of the questions from the discussion guide. So the first one is, there are a few examples of Dr. Rodriguez labeling emotions in his summaries to Jocelyn. How is this strategy a method to validate Jocelyn's thoughts and feelings? And I invite you all to either chat in or raise your hand, and you can go off mute and feel comfortable, or if you're in a setting where you can also talk in your response. Thanks, Nicole. Yes, shows active listening skills, shows empathy, indicates the therapist hears, assures her that she is understood and heard. And she feels like he's understanding what she's saying. Yeah. How do we, I guess, like, I'm curious from your all's personal experiences with practicing validation. How do you see that translating to like a confirmation of what thoughts and feelings the client is experiencing? And yeah, I'm seeing like the non-verbal cues also being talked about: eye contact, picking up on unspoken emotions, giving words, allowing her a place to share feelings and possibly make connections. Angela, I see your hand.
I actually find out hi that this is something that's actually kind of hard for me, and I don't know why, because I feel like sometimes I give validation that could just be like more like complimenting than actual kind of like the motivational interviewing skills where it's like you're supposed to more so say things that are actually true about what they say versus like trying to flatter someone. And it's not even like I'm trying to flatter them on purpose, but I just find that that's what I end up doing. And I really like how smooth he was, and it really, you could tell he was listening, and I'm just hoping to be able to get to that point.
Totally. I appreciate that, Angela. And it is nuanced, right? Like that's why we found this to be such an important core skill to emphasize, because it can easily be blurred with condoning or complimenting, right? And which is really, we want to try to move towards reflecting back and also naming emotions and really hearing what the client is saying and connecting that to the situation they're trying to navigate or the obstacles that they're facing. So that's a really relatable example, Angela. So thanks for sharing that. And I hope that over the course of this hour that the examples that you see from Dr. Rodriguez and you hear from other folks in this space can give you some more jumping off points to kind of keep applying that and translating that into your own practice. Going back to the chat. So let's see. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of confirmation. Helping the nervous system. I think that's a really important flag too, right? In terms of grounding, like helping folks feel understood in the moment can also help them be in a calmer, more grounded state, which then allows and can afford more reflection and more opportunity for activation in treatment. Gives patients the opportunity to correct us if we aren't understanding what they are saying. So important, Genevieve, right? Like we need to be able to be corrected. We need to, if we're not understanding, if we're not tracking what the client, the young person, the caregiver is saying, we need to get on track and find find an alignment in what is being shared. So really appreciate that note. I wonder, he mentions that she'll lose her son, though she didn't mention that, is an effective way of phrasing this. Yeah, that's a good flag. I think, you know, how we each individually with our own style, our own way of knowing our clients and responding kind of in some ways connects to Genevieve's comment of, you know, you put a reflection out there. If it doesn't land, being able to hold a correction potentially, because if that reframe or that reflection, that mirroring is not accurate, the client hopefully will feel safe enough because of the empathy, because of the reaching for understanding that you're practicing and demonstrating. She might be able to say, I'm not feeling like I'm going to lose him. But in fact, in the role play we saw, that seemed to resonate, right? There was like a heavy moment where she was sitting with, yeah, it's scary, right? And they were able to get to that core emotion of like fear and like and being scared. So great call out, Doris. It can be helpful for clients to hear what they say to also understand themselves through validation, right? That's that mirroring, going back and forth between what they're saying, having it digested and held by the provider, and then said back to them to make sure they're kind of sitting with and able to reflect on what it is that they're experiencing. He mirrored her affect as well. Emily, you mentioned that. Yep. I think there was a nice balance in mirroring, meeting her in that kind of tone and affect and just energy level. And then Jacqueline, we've got simply verbalizing observations and what is heard, not about judgment. Yes. Frame with that. I think I'm seeing and hearing. Yes. Beautiful. Leaning in as if to say, I'm here with you and what you were saying is important to me. Yeah, exactly. Because that holding and being able to have that spoken, but also unspoken is so much of what builds that rapport and that safety and that trust to then be able to activate in treatment, which we're going to get to in the next excerpt. I see some of y'all already talking about the second one, so I'm going to just read that one out loud. And if folks have additional thoughts about either of these questions, let's get into it. So the other question was identify which verbal and nonverbal cues Dr. Rodriguez applies to communicate validation with Jacqueline. So even like I saw someone mention eye contact. What other things are you all seeing physically from verbal or nonverbal cues that demonstrates that there's a validation and a holding acknowledgement in this interaction? I'm going to scroll up and see. Yeah, head nodding, which I just did inadvertently as I was describing that to you so well. Leaning in, right? Right tone of voice, leaning forward, calmness, face expression reflecting response to her comments, right? Like matching like eyebrow movement, even something so discreet as a raised eyebrow or squinting of the eyes, or matched with leaning in. Like these tiny behaviors also communicate validation. Beautiful. All right, I'm scrolling up and seeing if there's any other comments, and also if you can also raise your hand if you want to speak further about your comments. If I didn't get to your comment, feel free to come off mute, raise your hand. I think we got through. Oh, I like this one, Michelle. You mentioned not debating the facts, right? Not debating, going back and forth about the facts, but really allowing her to feel her feelings, right? And we kind of saw that with how she settled into the end of that clip, right? She really settled into, yeah, it's scary. It's been tough. Encourage her to open up more. Beautiful, y'all. Yes. Okay. Got a few more comments scrolling down. Open posture. He's very open and approachable, and then emphasizing on certain words. Yeah. So even like tonally, what word you choose and where you emphasize what you're reflecting back or rephrasing. Absolutely. Okay.
Nicole,
Okay.
before you move on,
Yeah.
I know there's been a little bit of discussion around when Dr. Rodriguez in the video mentioned, oh, you might be afraid of that you might lose your son. There was a little bit of a just response that came in. I think I would be hesitant to say this, as it might not be something she was worried about, but now she may be worried about that, right? So I know you spoke a little bit about like sort of the reframing and opportunities to correct things. So just wondering if you can just follow up on that a little bit, please.
Thank you for that. Is it connected to the?
Yes.
Oh, I see it. Yep, thank you. I'm seeing that now. Thank you, Caitlin, for chatting that. I think I'd be hesitant to say this, as it might not be something that she was worried about, but now will be worried about. So like some kind of fear of naming it naming it and then presenting it as a potential thing to be afraid of. I think that's a fair consideration. I think in each individual situation, you're going to know your client, and you're going to be working to really be accountable and hold the space. And so I think sometimes we want to name things, and there may be a risk in naming something that wasn't already said, but might be what you're picking up because of the circumstances and the details that you know about the situation and the caregiver you're working with, the youth you're giving with. So I think Caitlin, and folks that are also thinking the same thing or along those lines, definitely utilizing supervision to explore that and to see what's coming up for you and what you might be worried about that may not be maybe your worries, but not the parents' worries, or vice versa, the caregiver's worries. So yeah, and I think just really practicing that attunement with who you're working with, and being able to, if you misspeak or you say something that doesn't resonate, being able to be like, okay, yeah, that's not what you were feeling. I hear that. That's not what you were trying to communicate to me. And that's also okay to be able to own and to reflect on. Yeah, Penny, go for it.
This wasn't his first meeting with her. And that's, I think, what he said, that he'd already spoken with her. And so as far as that goes, sometimes we pick the times of saying something like that might be very deep. And he probably had already found something like that within her, and did feel that this was the time to say something. So, I mean, that could possibly be, I pick and choose the times very carefully on when I bring things up with people.
Thank you, Penny. Yeah, I appreciate. There's a little bit of a suspension of disbelief right here with we have a little tiny few minutes with this interaction. And so this isn't his first experience. And I know we're only watching a rapid, quick review of it. So you all will have more time with this too to reflect and think about how you might respond. But being really intentional, because you know who you're working with and you're aware of themes that might be coming up, and when's the right time, when's a good time to suggest some of these themes that may be otherwise unsaid. So Penny, I appreciate that naming of that kind of discretion in practice. Yeah. Excellent, y'all. And some more chats have come in. Yeah, Susan, so it can be helpful to say things, correct me if I'm wrong here, or if I'm wondering if, rather than offering a direct interpretation. Absolutely. Absolutely. Expressing curiosity, right? That compassionate, curious stance. Really not being curious just to be curious, but being curious because you care. Being curious because you want to understand this person's story, what they've gone through, and how they reached to be in the seat that they are in front of you today. Sometimes it's hard to say things that's serious, and it's helpful to have someone else voice it. Very true, right? These might be in the background, and this is part of that validation. Being able to name feelings, suggest themes that might be present, and then be able to sit with and hold, and then instill sort of a hope for change and a hope for activation in the course of treatment. Okay. All right. So I think on time, yeah, we're rocking and rolling. So let's go to our second excerpt. This is about a 4-minute long, and I'm going to pivot over to the video. We'll pick it up where we left off. Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Jason?
We, I think, always had a really close relationship, especially when he was younger. I think we used to do everything together, and it was always kind of just the two of us were like this. And I think now with, again, the divorce and everything that's coming up, it's just feels like he's angry with me all the time, and he doesn't want to have conversations with me, barely acknowledges or talks to me. So I don't know how to get back to what we had before.
I can totally understand that. Because on the one hand, all of this stuff is creating conflict between you and him, but you really do have a strong relationship with him. You have a strong foundation with him to work from. What I'm curious about is, as you think about what he's bringing home, his irritability, his behavior when he comes back from those visits, if you can put yourself in his shoes for a minute and tell me a little bit about what you think he's going through. Can you understand his perspective?
I know that it hasn't been easy on my son. You can imagine, the two of us, me and my ex-husband, were getting divorced, and now we're not living in the same household, and he's kind of traveling back and forth between the two of us, right? So I know that that's been really hard on him.
So Jocelyn, it does sound like you really do understand what he's going through, the fears that he has about losing his father and his frustration with not being able to see him. I'm wondering if you've been able to communicate that to him, that understanding of where he's coming from.
No. I mean, we're always fighting, and honestly, I wouldn't even know what to say to him anymore.
Yeah, and I can see that, right? So right now, because of everything that's happening, your relationship with him is really distant, and it sounds like there's a lot of more arguing than connecting.
Yeah.
Although that's been there in the past.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, it's really important that Jason know that you understand what he's going through.
I really just don't know how to share all that with him throughout all the fighting that's going on.
So one way of reconnecting with him, or to go back to that connection that you've had in the past, is to be able to help him know that you know what he's dealing with. Mm. What I'm wondering, and what I talked to him about, is maybe having him come in and you sharing with him that you understand what he's going through. If you could imagine for a minute, almost practicing here, what could you tell him that would help him understand or feel that you kind of get what he's going through?
I think I know it's been hard to see myself and your dad to be separated and no longer be together. But that I'm here for you, and that I know this has been a lot of changes, and they haven't been easy changes, but you're my son, and I want to continue to have the relationship that we used to have.
I think that would be a great starting point. There's a piece that I think he just needs to hear that from you, that you understand what he's going through. And I think we can bring him in And what I'd like you to do is be able to share exactly what you shared with me just now with him. Do you think you'd be able to do that?
Yeah, you can go ahead and give that a try.
Let's go ahead and bring him in, and we'll start the conversation there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Going back into our view here and our second excerpt. So let's go to the discussion questions pulled from the discussion guide that we're going to process together. So, what might happen if Dr. Rodriguez had not validated Jocelyn's feelings and thoughts? What would happen in the absence of validation? And think about the therapeutic relationship and the outcome for supporting both Jocelyn, the caregiver, and her son. Some of y'all. Okay, so I'm gonna track these as they're coming in as best as possible. It might make her feel he was siding with Jason, so worried about a bit of a splitting or taking sides going on. Conflict could potentially continue. She may have been resistant and not amenable, right? If she's not being validated, if her feelings and her experience is not going to be acknowledged, how are we going to make that bridge with the relationship with her and her son? She may have shut down, right? We may not be able to have this kind of exploration of her own internal feelings and fears and frustrations, if not for reaching for understanding of where she's operating from. She might get more defensive, right? Shut down, more defensive. She might feel more frustrated. She's already frustrated in the situation, but she might have felt more frustrated without the validation from Dr. Rodriguez. May close down, may not be comfortable sharing and shut down. She may not have gotten to the point of empathy. Yeah, so Sarah, we're going to jump to that about how this validation between caregiver and provider then allowed for validation and activation between caregiver and son, right? So she was able to reach for empathy for her son's experience. And that's that activation point in this example we're going to talk about as well. The connection and rapport would have taken longer, not happen at all. Exactly, Stephanie. Jocelyn could have felt like there was judgment, right? Yeah, totally. We dealing with caregivers, being able to support caregivers, making sure we're not judging or we want to validate their feelings. And that's some of that nuance between validation and condoning. We want to help reach for understanding of what their emotional experience is so that they can understand what's driving their parental choices, their caregiver choices, and move towards the goals maybe of strengthening their relationship with their children. She wouldn't be as willing to try his suggestion, right? Because there wouldn't have been trust. So why take a risk and try something if you don't have that trust that that caregiver is really understood and acknowledged by the provider, by Dr. Rodriguez. May have felt unheard or misunderstood. A lot of the same, low confidence in being able to do the work or make a change. Thinks he's doubting her perspective. I'm going to read it. So there would have been a lack of trust from Jocelyn. And there might have been transference feelings and, feel like he's like her husband who doesn't understand her, right? So these could be things to explore further, depending on being able to build rapport. If there is further, challenges in being able to connect and build that therapeutic relationship, thinking about transference that might be happening from Jocelyn's part. Might make her feel having a joint session wouldn't be helpful. Yeah, it would maybe, like we were saying earlier, might actually discourage Jocelyn from being open to Dr. Rodriguez's suggestion of a joint session with Jason and not feel like it could be a helpful risk to take. Might be, she would also think that she may be at fault, think she has a bad mother, right? So this judgment, depending on how the feelings are reflected back, if we're not using a strong validating stance, if we're communicating any kind of judgment, right? These kinds of thoughts of fault or being not good enough. Difficulties with son could continue or worsen without the support of therapy. Loss of trust and safety, reduced openness, increased shame or self-doubt. The open questions were great to allow him and us to dive in deeper to support her to be able to support her son. Yes. So I'm going to jump to the second question and try for us to drill into a little bit of the activation. So how did the validation that Dr. Rodriguez practiced in this space with Jocelyn activate her engagement in thinking about her relationship with Jason? So let's see. Is validating her makes her feel like an active member in the solution. Yes, may appear her needs are not important. It gave her empowerment. Yeah, we saw her feel empowered and open to she kind of talked about how she wouldn't even know where to start. She wouldn't even know where to begin to name some of these things. And because she was able to be met and understood in what experiences, frustrations, feelings she was holding, she was then able to have confidence in trying something and trying a different approach with her son. By him showing how he can understand her feelings, it opens the door for her to try and understand how her son is feeling. Exactly. Thanks, Emily. Gives her the confidence. Yep, lots of empowerment, lots of confidence being named here. Her being validated likely increase her desire or willingness to validate another's feelings. And love this. It is a great way to let her know, even in the midst of her difficulties, she still has strength. Excellent. Are there examples in y'all's experience where you've been able to see validation activate in treatment? And I'm thinking of, any personal examples, professionally personal examples of how validation has been able to bring a new kind of approach or let a client feel empowered and confident in trying something new because validation was present in your approach. And Melissa says it really helps a person to do the work when they feel heard and understood, right? We're promoting safety here. We're promoting a safe place to take risks because ultimately that validation is signaling understanding. And so, yeah, it lets the work occur. Gregory says, simply put, I think when validation makes people feel better, they're more energized to work on things. Yeah. Oh, Vanessa, you're picking up on the body language, right? You saw a big sigh and her shoulders relaxed. That was, yeah, some of the nonverbals from the caregiver around how she was signaling that she was feeling validated. She was feeling seen and understood. And Doris, client chose to join a social group after feeling validated. Client is now, oh, this is an example for you. Thank you for sharing. So being able to join a social group and now engaged in improving social skills. Yeah. And Jacqueline mentions, I notice when I successfully validate someone's feelings, it leads to a great conversation and comments from them. Yeah. So signaling that they're understood and they can go deeper and share more when you're meeting them in that space of validation. And just not being alone is a key to being open to making change. Yes. Well said, Lori. Okay. Thanks, y'all. This is wonderful level of engagement from such a large group. We're going to keep it moving because we are coming up on the end of the hour. I want to give you guys time to do the evaluation as well at the end. So I want to close with ways for y'all to be able to think about how these two tools, the discussion guide and the video, can be brought to life. We did a bit of work in parallel as you all were seeing parts of the video and seeing some of the questions in real time all together here. But we also want, as a resource for you to think about how these tools can be used elsewhere. So in my own practice in leading teams, being a supervisor, being a clinical professional, I've used lots of tools out of the CTEC, database of all these different best practices and ways to strengthen our skills. And so we wanted to, share some of these thoughts. So your own self-directed professional development. You're probably joining here on your own. Maybe you're joining as a team. I can't see all the participants, but definitely using this to reflect, take time to strengthen your own skills around validation and listening. You also could bring it into one-on-one or group supervision. You could use the video in total is just under 10 minutes. So it's a nice bite-size amount of material to sit and reflect on, and then be able to use the discussion guide questions to think about how do you get into the nuances of validation? How do you move away from condoning or complimenting or flattery and really into validating the feelings that are present and how to link them to activating and treatment. Also could think about it in a peer supervision or a team learning setting to really bring to life real life cases and challenges that might be present. And I've also used these kinds of tools in new staff onboarding. So to kind of set a tone of, this is how we want to, these are the skills we want to emphasize. This is how we want to approach the support that we're offering to the caregivers, to the youth, to the clients that we're serving, and really center around values of empathy, respect, and trauma-informed engagement. And I see the link is also just dropped by Felicia. Thank you so much. So you've got the link of the skills and action validation set, and the PDF was also linked earlier. So lots of ways to take this into the world, keep strengthening this core skill of validation beyond just this hour that we've had together. And with that, let's see, go to the next. Okay, references, just so you guys can see where we pulled some of the research around, validation and how effective it can be. And yeah, we've got some time for any more Q&A, any more thoughts or questions about this, this video, the skill of validation, the discussion guide. You can go off mute, raise your hand, or chat in as well. And Diana, I see you off mute. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I was just going to invite folks to put anything into the chat box, your thoughts, your feedbacks, any questions. I know that it seems just from the feedback that you all have shared that you do recognize the importance of validation in treatment and in the services that you have, right? And I think it also just speaks to also, if you're talking about it from an organizational agency perspective, that retention rate, right? If right off the bat, you're not utilizing these skills from the very beginning, they may not come back. The youth, the family, the child may not come back to services. So really, how do you start to build, really pulling from all the things that you all shared earlier on, right? How to instill that hope, how to have the individuals in front of you feel seen and heard, and that distinction between condoning and validating, right? But how do you do that earlier on so that they can continue to work with you and ideally reach the goals that you all agree on? So yeah, I do just wanted to highlight that. I don't think we're getting that many questions, but let me see. I did just see one come in.
I saw one, yeah. And Sarah, if you're able to come off mute, I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe a specific example of the current contrarian. I have an idea of what you think, what you're suggesting there, but I don't want to misspeak. So if you're able to come off mute and share a little bit more about that question, and I'll read it. It says, do you have suggestions or insights with contrarian types of people? I'm not seeing Sarah's hand raised. Oh, headphones on. Peers, clients, family, like caregivers. Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'm getting this, if you want to chat in also, like the idea that they're kind of disagreeing with everything or kind of shooting everything down or like not open to who you will repeat and what they said, and they say no. Okay, so they're like, you're trying to validate, and then they're coming back with, no, that's not what I meant. I would work with that. And I would try to remain in a stance of compassionate curiosity. And I would imagine, for ourselves, what I've been in those spaces with teens and youth and caregivers, where there's a lot of, kind of like a reframing or a no, that's not what I meant. And I would work with it in the space, stay curious, thank them for the opportunity to really understand where they're coming from, ask further questions to reach for understanding. And then I would also balance that with definitely utilize supervision, because that can be a really challenging interaction and kind of exchange, especially if it happens consistently, to process either with your supervisor or with peers about how you're managing that, how you're taking care of yourself through that kind of interaction. But I would really try to stay in a curious, compassionate, curious stance, and try to thank them for the opportunity to understand, because that's, even in their contrarianness, even in their telling you that you're not getting it, that gives you a chance to go back and try to understand and continue engaging with them to reach for that. All right, some more questions are coming in. Thank you all so much. Do you have
Yeah.
any, oh, Diana, go ahead.
No, I think we're on the same question. Go ahead.
Pat, so do you have any advice for when validating the caregiver only makes them angrier or more elevated? I recently had a family where the caregivers were under so much stress that any acknowledgement was essentially a trigger. That sounds like a very, high stakes, high stress sort of exchange. I think in that moment, their nervous system, if they're in that level of a stress kind of state, it may be just hard for them to have to confront what you're validating and what you're reflecting back and mirroring. I might, if they're open to it, I think I'm like off the cuff, I'm thinking of grounding exercises to start in, validating that they're coming in a place of heightened need, using language that's going to reach them and try to meet them where they're at. Maybe just even doing a check-in of like on a scale of where's their stress level today. If they're using the word stress, use the language they're using. And then try to start with ways that can kind of regulate their nervous system even from the outset, which I know can be challenged if there's like concrete needs that are not being met or systems, that are at play that are causing additional stress. But I would probably, if you're noticing that is where they're starting, trying to enter into a space of starting the space with some kind of grounding exercise to kind of help their nervous system regulate. Let's say, is this the next one, Diana? As they say, first impressions are important. Validating anyone's feelings and opinions right from the first meeting is key because at times we may not get a second chance, especially when it comes to our youth. So true. Accountability also matters in terms of the misunderstanding and or interpretation because it can show to that person we are human. Yeah, right. We're not perfect. We're also not the experts, y'all. They are the experts. They know their journey. They know what they've gone through. We're trying to bear witness and to validate and to make sure they feel understood so we can support them with the doors we can open with the expertise we have to support where they're trying to go. So right, being able to be accountable, being able to hold our missteps and our misspeaks is part of the process. Validate the experience and thanking them will go far. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Renee. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. Before we close out, I do just want to highlight some upcoming events that we have. We've been talking a little bit about sort of peer. So if you are a peer advocate, we have an offering next week, Adopting a Strength-Based Approach for Family Peer Advocates. We also have an offering for those of you who are supervisors. We are currently at capacity for this offering, so be on the lookout for any future cohorts. But again, it's not just supporting you as the providers doing the work, but also providing supervisors who are in turn then supporting clinicians and you all that are doing the work. So with that said, I want to say a very big thank you to Nicole Lee for such a great presentation. There are a lot of thank yous that are coming through the chat, so really do appreciate that. Also want to thank you, our audience, for taking the time out of your busy work day to attend today's webinar. And as we close out, you will have received a short feedback survey. We would really appreciate you filling it out just because your feedback does help to inform all our future offerings. And again, I do encourage you to visit our website, mcsilverta.org, to access past trainings, as well as some of the resources that were mentioned today. As a reminder, the recording and the slides and the discussion guide will be posted on our website within the next 3 to 5 business days, while the transcript will be online within the next 2 weeks. So again, the link for the survey has just been posted in the chat box. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at ctac.info@nyu.edu. And on behalf of CTAC and our presenter, thank you so much for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye all.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.